Chris Berman, author and voice of that piece. He is with us now on SportsCenter. Boomer, you laid out for us a history of Wilson as an owner and a football man. Complete the picture, if you would, here with recollections of him as a person.
Well, John, good evening. It's obviously a very sad day for anybody that followed pro football and was fortunate enough, certainly, to have known Ralph Wilson. I think the thing that we must remember about Ralph is from a young man, and what were they, 39 or 40, the Foolish Club, late 30s, just about 40, when they said this AFL thing with 8 teams might work. They were about loving the sport of football and loving those who played it and were in it and loving those who followed it. And I think that there was a twinkle in his eye and a laughter in his voice from a guy in the 30s to a guy in his 50s to a guy in his 70s. And I got to tell you, as we stayed close in his 90s, John, he would write letters and be funny. He would try, even if the Bills weren't winning, he would take the that glass half full part of it. I think the word loyalty we ought to use. Actually, I should have started with that, John, because forget just loyalty to Buffalo, where others might have said, boy, there's certainly a pot of gold somewhere other than Buffalo, New York, but he would have none of it. This man served in the U.S. Navy in the Atlantic and the Pacific fronts. All right? So before we even get into the football, we should honor him as a World War II veteran on both fronts. His vision, his laughter, his love for the game, his joie de vivre, even his 90s, will be with us for a long, long, long time. It's a sad day, but he wouldn't want us to be grieving very much. He would want us to look at the bright side of what today is, not the downside. He's the one-time owner of one team for over a half a century. Say no more.
We will ask you one more. You touched on the 4 Super Bowl losses. How was he with never winning that Lombardi trophy?
Well, he never really groused about. I'm sure privately. Look, you're John. Anyone in the game is a competitor, and I don't want to say he was satisfied with being the only team that probably will ever get to 4 in a row, even though they didn't win any of it. It would have been only poetic justice if they'd won one. Now we're analyzing football. If they had won the first one, I thought they would have won another one. But that's neither here nor there. That's not the question you asked me. He was better than you and I would be. I would tell you that. And most anybody would be. And he kept thinking that next year was the year, even though we know that the Bills this century didn't get in there. You know, I want to relate one other story so our viewers can, before I move along, is when he was inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, there's a wonderful parade the folks at Canton put on. And as his presenter, I was lucky enough to ride with him all that day. And you know what he remembered that day and years later? He goes, look at the people who came out along the road with oxygen tanks and out of hospitals just to watch all of us Hall of Famers go by. They're here to see us. I can't believe that. As this is his day after 50 years in pro football, that's what he took away. Years later, he told me, remember those folks lined up with the oxygen tanks who then just went back to the hospital in their beds 2 hours later? They wanted to see the parade. And by God, that was the thrill that he got, giving somebody else a big thrill that day. I'll never forget that.
A humble man, to be sure. Chris Berman, friend of Ralph Wilson, and has touched on Hall of Fame presenter in 2009. Thanks, Boom.